All right. Welcome to the live stream, everyone. Let's just get things sorted here as we go into the last thing I'm doing really for 2025. Thanks for being here. I see we got a lot of people in the comments, whether you're watching on LinkedIn or on YouTube. We've got Gloria Jean. We've got Zoe here as well. Folks from Charlottesville. We've got Jackie from Chicago. Again, Gloria Jean joining us from Maryland. Dan is joining us as well. Washington. We got a lot of folks joining us. I hope we'll have a few more joining us as we make our way through. And I do have my ceremonial cup of coffee to start off my day because that's what I've got going on every single morning for me as a night owl. I get things going a little bit later for me. So let's get started with this live stream. What I'm going to be doing here today as kind of a wrap up. This will also be presented as the episode that's coming out later today for my podcast, A Productive Conversation, a special solo episode, is to just kind of end off the calendar year with some tips that you can try. Maybe look back at what you've done in the year that's just gone by if you celebrate from January 1st to December 31st, but also maybe what you can look towards doing in the months ahead, right? So for example, as we're doing this today, December 31st, 2025, you can reflect back. You can use this as kind of a catalyst for maybe a journaling habit. You might even be able to take some notes or think about this as you go through this video. Again, whether you're watching it live or whether you are watching it after the fact, because these can apply at any time of year. I just wanted to kind of present something that I've been thinking about, not just in the past year, but leading up to this year, really. These are things that have unfolded for me as TimeCrafting has developed and how this way of operating, this approach has kind of come to bear year over year over year. It started off, of course, as the Now Year formula, became the Now Year method. TimeCrafting was how I planted the ultimate seed with it. And of course, TimeCrafting was explored more deeply in my book, The Productivity Diet, which you can kind of see in this upper corner here. If you have a copy of it, I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you don't have a copy of it, you can pick it up wherever books are sold. And lots of exciting stuff happening in the calendar year of 2026 that I'm excited to share. Not going to do that necessarily in this live stream, but I definitely want to make sure that, it's something that I share as the months progress. So starting literally tomorrow, I go into my ritual. If you're on my email list, you would have seen what I do every January 1st, even though I don't celebrate the year per se at that point in time. I do something. I use January 1st as kind of a marker to do something. And again, if you're on my email list, you would have seen that. If you're in the TimeCrafting Trust community, you definitely saw that. Plus, you got a little bit of a bonus guide to walk you through that ritual. And so that's what I'll be doing tomorrow. But then right after that, it's a Friday, and I'll probably spend some time getting ready to really move things forward with my next major project, which I'll be sharing in the month of January, and then also what I plan to do within the TimeCrafting Trust community as well. But that's neither here nor there for now. What I really wanted to do is kind of share these 12 tips with you that you can use, again, moving forward. You don't have to use all of them. Some of them you'll look at and go, well, this doesn't really apply to me. Some you'll double down on, right? So this kind of goes in conjunction with the 12 Days of TimeCrafting program that we are literally at the midway mark of. And so I decided to put this little live stream together, this episode together, so that way it kind of goes in tandem with them. Now, again, these 12 tips don't necessarily relate to what you would get in the 12 Days of TimeCrafting program or what you got in the 12 Days of TimeCrafting program, because anyone who purchased it at that $12 price point, that ship has sailed. And if you remember the community, you have access to the 12 tips of TimeCrafting, or the 12 Days of TimeCrafting rather. Inside the community. But these are just the only similarity between them. Maybe there's two. One is the fact that there are 12 of them, but probably more deeply is that what I'm going to share with you, you can apply to some of those deliverables that you would get in that program. So without further ado, let's start to go through each of these tips. And this is, again, because this is going to be used also for an audio podcast, not going to use a lot of visual cues. I'll just share these tips as well as some points alongside. If you have questions, If you have insights or thoughts that you want to share, put them in the comments, whether you're watching this live or watching the replay. I'd love to hear from you. And if I'm able to live, I will. And if not, I will do so after the fact. But yeah, we got a lot of folks joining us here today, and I'm excited to get started. So let's go. So the first tip, the first of the 12 tips, and this is one that I've really, I wouldn't say struggled with, but it's one that I haven't leaned into as much in the early part of my journey, and especially even in the early part of 2025, even though the productivity diet came out in March of 2025. That's really when I started to lean into it. But I've really been thinking about this for a long period of time. And what this tip is you've got to stop trying to manage time and start relating to it. So most of us have been taught either explicitly or implicitly that time is something that we can control. You know, we can tame it, we can dominate it. But when that doesn't work, we assume that we're the problem, right? But time really doesn't behave like a task manager. And that's why when people say, oh, I've got these time management apps, I think that's a broad category. First off, it's a misnomer. But you know, if you were going to use that term, you'd be talking about a variety of apps, calendars, note-taking, journaling. All of those are related to the managing of time, or as I would prefer, the managing of your relationship with time. So time doesn't behave like a task manager, and it really doesn't respond to pressure or force. You know, if anything, it responds negatively to pressure or force. It keeps moving, right? Whether we're ready or not. That's what happens with time. So a healthier shift to consider, and this is why this is the first tip, is this. Really stop asking how to manage time and start asking how to meet it. So stop asking how to manage time and really start asking how to meet it. Some days, time's going to arrive gently, right? Other days, it shows up really loud and noisy and demanding. The real work isn't to bend it, it's to respond wisely, okay? So when you treat time like a relationship instead of a resource, your whole posture changes. The relationship changes. Everything changes. You listen more, you resist less, and you really stop trying to win the day. We hear that phrase a lot. And you really just start trying to live inside it well, okay? So we all heard the phrase, or some of us have, I know I have, Father Time is undefeated. You don't have to go to war with time. And when you try to manage it, that is what you're doing. So again, stop trying to manage time and start relating to it. All right, second tip. Name what this season is for before planning anything. Now, let's get into what a season is. Now, I'm not talking, you know, winter, spring, summer, or fall. All you have to do is call James Taylor. One of the quiet mistakes we make, really, when it comes to all this is assuming that every season, not just the natural ones, but seasons of life, they should all look the same. But we know that's not really true. If you think back, every season that you've had in your life, whether short or long, has a different look and feel to it. They don't have the same pace. They don't have the same ambition. And they don't have the same output, right? Seasons aren't neutral, though. They do have character, right? And you can see that, especially when you look back. So some seasons are for building, right? And some are for maintaining. We see that, again, whether you're looking at that from a day-to-day or whether you're looking long tail. And some are for recovering from something you didn't realize took as much out of you as it did, right? I would argue that 2025 might have been that for a lot of people. And maybe 2026 is going to be like that, right? But if you don't name what a season is for, then you'll default to more. That's what you'll default to. If I check off more boxes, if I do more, if I be more, that's where we go. Because if we go to more, we think we're more likely to find a thing, the thing, whatever it is, right? Actually, this came up with the community. It, right? The idea of it. You will keep looking for it. And that it doesn't necessarily mean a task. It means maybe more effort. Again, more pressure. We talked about pressure in the first tip. More guilt when you can't keep up. which can lead to more regret and more shame. And all that more, when you're seeking it, doesn't necessarily relate to doing more. It's other things that show up as more. So before you plan the days ahead, ask yourself really a simple question. What is this season asking of me? And don't dismiss this out of hand. Don't say, oh, Mike, I can't do that. I don't have as much agency over my time as you do. No, I can't ask that. It's a silly question to ask. Just try it. Ask that question. What is this season asking of me? Is it, you don't ask in an ideal scenario. You don't ask it in an aspirational sense. You ask in an honest sense. That's the only, again, going back to tip 1, the only way you're going to have a great relationship with time is if you're honest with it and honest with yourself. So clarity in this area, when you name what this season is what the season is for, and ask yourself, what is this season asking of me? Clarity here saves an enormous amount of energy later, and effort and attention and all of those things. So that's the second tip. Name what this season is for before planning anything. And this is for those of you that are watching the live stream or listening right now. This is where the Ready Retreat can be really helpful inside of our membership community, TimeCrafting Trust. We actually do this kind of thing inside of the Ready Retreat. We're doing one in January. So again, if you're interested, you could check out the TimeCrafting Trust community. Easy for me to say. What's easier for me to say is tip number 3 after I take this sip of coffee. Tip number 3 is to design days around themes and not tasks. So what's interesting is often what we'll do is we'll ask ourselves that big question. What do I get to do today? Actually, what do I need to do today? What do I have to do today? And that immediately goes into the details, the tasks, right? Whenever I wake up, and I've mentioned this before. I mentioned this in the book, The Productivity Diet. I've mentioned this in my other work. When I wake up in the morning, so for example, today is Wednesday. When I woke up, I didn't say, well, what do I need to do today? There were certain things that were on the calendar, which I saw, and this is one of them. But I don't ask myself specificity out of the gate. Number one, you can hear me. I'm not great in mornings necessarily. I'm not at 100%. I'm a night owl. So to get that detail oriented, even with a plan in front of me, my mind will wander. But if I ask myself what the theme of the day is, which is editing, that's what today's theme is, then all of a sudden I've created a little bit more of an area of focus. I've harnessed my attention to that. So I'm cutting out the more, which we talked about in number 2, and I can actually look at these things. Because remember, tasks multiply, and they always will, right? Themes, on the other hand, what they do is they unify. Right. So when you build a day or any period of time, whether it's horizontal theming or what have you, but we're focusing specifically on the day here. When you build a day around a theme, whether it's writing, learning, editing, tending or maintaining, connecting, you give your attention a direction instead of a checklist. And attention loves direction more than a checklist, right? You're no longer asking what's next. You're asking what fits here. Themes, what they do is they reduce friction. And friction is really a big pain point because it shows up even when we try to eliminate it. So we have to try to find ways to reduce the friction in our lives. And what themes do is they reduce friction because they answer questions in advance. That's literally what happens to me every morning. They create a container for choice. So when those distractions or disruptions show up, and they always do and they always will, you have something to measure them against. So a theme day, and I've heard this before, Mike, that sounds too rigid. It's not rigid, it's orienting. Like it gives you that sense of direction. You can decide what fits into a theme. You can make your themes as broad or as wide as you need them to be. That's why they're personal, right? There's nuance involved. So themes, a theme day isn't rigid. It's orienting, right? And it tells your attention where, for lack of a better term, home is, okay? You don't need to design all your days around themes. I don't even do that. Friday, I don't have a theme. But if you start with one day and then start adding more and figure out, again, there's lots of ways to do this, either quickly or over time. And again, I get into this inside the community and inside of the book, The Productivity Diet. And there's some stuff inside of the 12 Days of Time Crafting that will also do this. To me, that is a huge way to kind of give yourself and harness your attention towards your intentions. It really does put you in that state of what I'm calling productiveness, which is not a new term, of course, but it allows productiveness to kind of make its way and carry you through the day, that state of productiveness. All right, let's move on to number 4. And I'm seeing here, I'm going to take a look at some of the messages here that I'm seeing in the live stream. And yeah, basically we've got some plans for Tim in the new year, which I'm excited to see, and hopefully that we'll see them unfold inside of our community, because Tim is a member of our community. All right, let's move on to number 4. Number 4, and this seems like a no-brainer, I would think, but again, it relates back to number 2 because we look for more, and it also relates to number 3. Because, again, you're creating this filter or funnel for your focus. The tip number 4 is reduce choices before increasing commitment. So reduce your choices before increasing your commitment. So we often think, again, the problem is motivation or discipline, and this is a big one because I'm a big fan of Green Lantern, or willpower. Right? But more often, the problem is really just simply too many options. Alvin Toffler talks about this phenomenon known as overchoice in his book Future Shock. And that's back from the 70s. So we're talking over 50 years ago. That hasn't waned at all. If anything, we have more options than ever. I was actually just talking to my mother yesterday. Called her because we had a very busy holiday season. And we started to talk about, how the news, and I've got a whole blog post about the news and your attention, and how you can kind of still keep up without being overwhelmed, right? How you can keep tabs without keeping yourself necessarily awake at night, or keep yourself from being as productive as you can be, or as focused as you can be on the things you actually do have agency and control over. But we talked about the sheer amount of access to information that we have, and what's happened since, well, let's use Alvin Toffler's the 70s. Era when he wrote the book Overchoice, or when he wrote the book Future Shock, which has Overchoice in it, is how many television stations in, let's just use the main networks in the United States were back then. There were 3: ABC, CBS, NBC. That was pretty much it. There were some specialty networks and stuff, but we'll go with the core 3. In fact, Fox News didn't show up until the 80s, right? Or Fox, not even Fox News. Fox News showed up later. There was no 24-hour news cycle per se. There was no 24-hour sports channel. There was no golf channel. My mom's a golf fan. You can watch Golf Channel 24 hours a day. You can watch anything 24 hours a day. We have access to the internet. You can get information at any given amount of time, which means you're seeing a lot of stuff come your way, which are essentially options, right? And instead of having 3 sources, now you have what seems to be an infinitesimal amount of choices for where to gather your information. And some of it is good, some of it is not. Some of it is going to lean one way, some's going to lean another. But no longer do we live in a world where at the end of the broadcast day, they play a national anthem and the TV goes to test pattern and then static, right? And so the same can be said for so many other things in our lives. As a matter of fact, I would argue that our lists, the ones that multiply the tasks, there's always been that. We can always add more. So again, it's just too many options. So every open possibility, it really does carry a quiet cost, even the good ones. And believe me, I've seen many come my way over the years, and I've had to make some choices around it. And it's probably kept me in some ways from actually proceeding as far as I may have desired to, or may have thought I wanted to, simply because I didn't want to have more options come my way. So when everything is really possible, especially good things, let's use that, nothing really feels chosen. So before you commit to doing more, try choosing less. Again, this is not a new phenomenon. It's not a new idea. So remove options that don't matter right now. Again, this relates back to the season tip number 2, right? What season? That's one way to reduce your choices. You can close loops that don't need to stay open. And again, honesty plays a role in here. Am I really going to do this? Do I really want to do this? Right? Commitment really, it feels heavy weighted down, when it's layered upon or layered rather, like on top of excess, when you've got too much, right? So it really does feel lighter commitment when it grows out of clarity. So again, reduce choices before increasing commitment. Number 5. Sorry, just noticing a comment here. And Tim brings it up perfectly. Less but better. Greg McEwen, essentialism. Yep, that's great. And Don puts, you had to find a friend with Super Channel to get the good stuff. I do remember having the pay TV channels, which were basically, I would argue, the predecessor to what we have for streaming options now, right? So again, there's a lot of interesting things to think about. And by the way, some of you watching this, like, what are you talking about? Like, I've always had a lot of access to information. Look at AI at this point. It's giving you even more. So this seeking of information, this seeking that we have, we're explorers. Humans are explorers, right? We look for novelty. We look for meaning. We look for purpose, even in the small things, right? Even if we're not intentionally necessarily finding it purposeful, we are looking for these things. We seek, right? And we have so many things to look for and look toward and seek out. Reducing the choices is what you have to do. By the way, number 5, let's move on to that. This is, again, not new. And I'm seeing more of this, especially when it comes to analog tools. We were talking about Sarah and I, who's in the chat right now. Really, we talked about the idea of analog and how there's this resurgence of analog, right? Handwritten tools, notebooks, fountain pens. I mean, I'm a huge fountain pen fan. The bullet journal, right? All of these things. But really what this is externalizing your thinking, getting it out of your head. By the way, this can happen digitally as well, right? So tip number 5 is externalize thinking so your mind can rest. Basically, this kind of aligns with one of my old phrases I said, and it was a bit too absolute, but I'll throw it out here anyways. Capture everything, regret nothing, right? The reason that I suggested that is because if you get those things out of your head, and this is not new. David Allen talked about mind like water. We've heard about getting things in front of you. Tiago Forte talks about building your second brain, right? If you externalize your thinking, your mind can rest. It can actually do the thing that only your brain can do, right? Your mind is absolutely brilliant, but it is a terrible storage unit, right? When you keep everything in your head, your attention really can never fully land. Part of it is always like guarding or remembering or rehearsing, right? Writing things down, and writing, my daughter even says this. Now I'm going to write this down. She pulls her phone out, and like, that's not really, I guess that's writing, right? Because it's typing, right? So writing things down, it really isn't about productivity, right? It's about kindness. It tells your mind, hey, you don't got to hold this anymore. Think about it that way, right? So externalize thinking so your mind can rest. Once your thoughts are outside of you, you can look at them instead of carrying them, okay? You can shape them. You can return to them very easily, or you can just let them go. A rested mind, it doesn't come from doing less. I think this is the misnomer that people have. I'm just going to do less. It comes from holding less internally. If you've ever had a day, you probably have, where you haven't looked at your list. Let's say you haven't. I've done that, right? And you do the thing that you know matters, just innately. And because you've got your other stuff written down and captured, you can trust what your mind is telling you at that point. And then you can also trust that you can return to the things that are captured later. For me, as someone who writes, that's a wonderful gift. Because then I can say, hey, I don't know what my other stuff is, but I don't need to know that. I just need to focus on this. I need to devote my attention, my concentration to this. So I don't think we hear with this tip, we just hear capture everything, get it out of your head. But why? It's so that your mind can rest. It needs to. So that you can really tap into its brilliance. Okay? All right. And by the way, the idea of capture everything, regret nothing, that went out the window for me after watching the movie The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, the Ben Stiller remake. And there's a particular scene where he finally, spoiler alert, goes and runs into the photographer that he's been communicating with. I don't really give up too much when I'm saying this. It's really a wonderful movie, highly underrated. And there's a moment where the photographer sees, I think it's a snow leopard in the distance, and he's got his camera ready. And Walter Mitty, played by Ben Stiller, and the photographer, played by Sean Penn, they're together, and you know, Walter Mitty says to Sean Penn, as he sees the creature there, he says, "Aren't you going to take the photo?" He goes, "Sometimes I don't. I just want to be with the moment." And I think that, number one, that's absolutely wonderful. And again, he says, "Sometimes I don't." It's not like he never does. It's just sometimes that he doesn't take the photo. And I find that when I saw that, for me, that was very much oh, right. Not everything needs to be captured, because by capturing the other stuff, my brain, my mind does have the space for that, which I, by the way, can write about in my journal later, which I often do. But I don't necessarily take the photo, or I don't necessarily write it down in that moment. I kind of let the moment be. So when that came to mind and I saw that, I'm like, oh, then you may not want to capture everything. So again, externalize your thinking so your mind can rest. Number 6, we got a lot of comments in here, which is great. Treat energy as a constraint and not a flaw. So I've noticed over the past 15 years of doing this work that my ability to stay productive, or stay in stay in the activity of producing, let's use that, has, I wouldn't say waned, but it's changed for sure. And my energy isn't what it used to be, right? And we all, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you want to look at it, that all happens to everybody. You know, you can't do what you used to be able to do when you were younger, right? And I find it really interesting that as I'm going through these things, and I know it's not going to get, I know that I'm not going to have these surges of energy, or it's not going to get back to the levels it was more consistently. I guess that's probably a better way to put it, unless, you know, some lifestyle changes. There's things around that. But my point is that the propensity to look at that change and get down about it, or looking at it as a flaw rather than a constraint, can really hamper your ability to get into the state of productiveness that we want, because a state is more level, right? Whereas productivity, bouts of it, it can spike, especially if you're using energy. And it may not spike, because if your energy can't get that high, it's going to be at a level set. So productiveness is really gentle on your energy, I guess. But we have to start, first off, we have to take into account energy management anyway, but it needs to be looked at not as a flaw or a weakness or something to fight against. It's just a constraint. We're really quick to moralize it, right? Like, again, as a night owl, the idea of, oh, how come you don't have enough energy in the morning? Because my body isn't wired that way. You know, high energy is praised. Low energy is treated like a failure, right? But energy really isn't it's not a character trait. It's a condition. It's a condition of what's going on. Again, maybe in the season that you're in, maybe the age that you are, maybe the likability of the thing you're doing, right? Some days you're going to have more depth than others. Some days you're going to have more momentum than others. Some days it's going to feel like you have very little of both, very little at all of anything. So really none of that makes you broken or a failure or anything in between. Really, the mistake is planning as if, when you plan as if energy is infinite, that's the problem, or consistent for that matter. And I know we've chatted inside our community about this, and I've had conversations with those who have neurodiversity elements. We're all neurodiverse to a point, but You know, we're talking about when we talk about ADHD and things of that nature, people who have traumatic brain injuries, like consistency is something that is elusive, right? So sustainable systems, what they have, they assume fluctuation, right? So they match effort to capacity instead of demanding the impossible or the inhumane. So it allows you to add humane elements to your lives instead of working in or living in an inhumane way. So the one thing that we know that we also have to kind of keep in mind and manage is energy. So if we start to look at that a bit more and work with our energy rather than against it, the work will last longer, and so will you. So treat energy as a constraint and not a fault. All right. Now, as we hit the midway mark of this live stream, for those of you that are watching it today, which is New Year's Eve, December 31st, we're at the midway mark also of the 12 Days of TimeCrafting program. It's, you know, we're coming up to that. So I did say that you would not be able to purchase it for $12. I didn't say you'd be able to purchase it at all again. And today only, for the rest of today, for the next 24 hours, so taking us all the way until this live stream ends, so 10 a.m. Pacific time, which will be also, so 10 a.m. Pacific time on New Year's Day, January 1st, I'm going to take it off the shelves again. But you can't get it for $12. It's now it's actually $24. So we doubled the price. So it's $24 for 12 deliverables over a 12-day period. If you purchase it today, you'll get an email between now and you'll get it between now and the deadline. At the absolute latest, you'll get it at the end of the deadline on New Year's Day. You'll get all 6 days that you've not gotten delivered day by day. And then you'll join the rest of those that are in it to get the remaining days as they unfold. If you're a member of TimeCrafting Trust Premium, like a paying member, you're already getting this. So you don't need to do anything with this. But if you're not, and you want to get these gifts, and so far, and you can see in the comments maybe some of what we've unveiled already, some new things, some refined things. There's some really cool things coming. I've got actually, I think today's just came out. And I'm pretty happy about the results of that. We've got another one lined up for tomorrow that I don't want to reveal what the gifts are up front, because part of the surprise is you get to unwrap these things every day. So if you're interested, we'll put a link in the comments. Sarah's going to take care and put a link of that in the comments, both in LinkedIn and in YouTube. And that way you can purchase it. So again, right now, we are recording this live, so it is 9:35 Pacific time. The live stream will end in 25 minutes. You'll have 24 hours between now and then to purchase it at the price of $24, and you'll get the 6 gifts from the first 6 days. Once you within the time frame of purchasing it, might have to wait a little bit because you can't quite automate it as much as I'd like. So rest assured you'll get all 6, and then you'll join everybody else here, including the members of the TimeCrafting Trust community, who also are getting this as it unfolds day after day. If you want a bit of a cheat code on this, I wasn't going to do this. Sarah's probably going to say, Mike, don't do this. If you want to become a member of TimeCrafting Trust Premium, you'll get access to the 12 days of TimeCrafting, and you can become a member for as little as $14 a month. So I'm no mathematician, but if you spend $24 on the 12 days of TimeCrafting and you get those, which is fine, totally fine, gets delivered to you via email. You can unwrap it every single day, and then when it's done, you've got access to all of them. Or you could join for 1 month at $14 US and become a member of our community and get access to so much more, including Focus Fix sessions. The Ready Retreat is coming up in January, so you'd get access to that, as well as a plethora of other things. You would get the 12 days of TimeCrafting, of course, for $14 US a month. So that's a difference of $10. By the way, if you went with A quarterly membership, it's only $6 more than buying the 12 days of time crafting today. It's $30. An annual, that's 99 US. So again, if this is something that interests you, we've got links in the description. We'll have them in the comments as well. And again, let's move. I'd love for you to unwrap these deliverables of the 12 days of time crafting. I'd love it even more if you become a member of the community. You can see quite a few people here right now as well. So let's move on. So number 7, build systems that expect inconsistency. Build systems that expect inconsistency. This ties back into the previous one. It actually, all of these tie in together, right? So most systems, they fail not because they're bad, but because they expect perfection. And this was actually one of the biggest challenges when I was putting together the productivity diet, which was originally going to be a book called TimeCrafting, is I was having a hard time drawing a line in the sand of like, this is how TimeCrafting works. Again, having a membership helps for the evolutionary part of it because this system does evolve, but I needed to have the fundamentals down. And if you go into any system with this idea that it's going to be perfect and that they expect perfection, these systems you're adopting, or you approach it with that in mind. A lot of people approach getting things done with this in mind, right? Then you're going to have a hard time sustaining it. The systems that expect perfection, those ones that fail, it's because they assume that every day will go as planned. That doesn't happen. That you'll show up the same way every time. Again, nuance plays a role here. That's not going to happen. That interruptions won't happen. That's not going to happen either. Real life is uneven. Some days will flow, others will resist, and a system that only works on good days isn't a system. It's really it's a fair weather plan. It's a fallacy, right? So, you need to design for disruption, right? Themes work that way because you can pull away and then come back. Go, what's the theme? Oh, this. Or using attention pass can be really helpful here. Oh, I'm tired. What can I do when I'm tired? Oh, I'm getting interrupted. Oh, okay, I'll take care of that. Oh, wait, I'm not tired anymore, but what do I, I want to do some more maintenance tasks. Okay, what are all my maintenance tasks? Like it allows your brain to kind of connect dots differently. And those dots aren't exactly so specific that you get paralyzed. I mean, again, that can happen with anything. But the way that TimeCrafting is built is it doesn't really allow for that in the same way. You've got to build in forgiveness as well, right? You've got to make it easy for you to resume, as I just touched on, not just to get started, okay? Durability, which is one of the core kind of pros, for lack of a better term, or benefits, or even qualities. That's probably the best way to put it, of TimeCrafting: simplicity, flexibility, durability, and sustainability. So durability, what it comes from expecting inconsistency, okay? So, and not being surprised by it. So if you build a system that expects inconsistency, you're going to be able to get through, and not only get through, like survive, but thrive. So again, number 7, build systems that expect inconsistency. Number 8, allow range instead of chasing perfection. This is a fun one. So allow a range or tolerance instead of chasing perfection. So perfection is, well, it's seductive because it feels clean, right? It feels, it feels clean. But it's also pretty brittle, right? Real progress really lives in a range, or in ranges, right? Close enough, almost there, within tolerance, as I pointed out, good enough to continue, okay? If you think about adjusting, well, the temperature in the shower, right? You don't get it exactly right. You shouldn't expect to get it exactly right out of the gate. You might get close, right? And after you're familiar with the shower, you could probably know, hey, if I have it at this temperature, it's going to be spot on. But what if what if somebody decides to run water somewhere else in the house? That changes things, right? So there's external factors in mind. And also it could be dependent on how you're feeling that day. Maybe it is too hot. Maybe it's too cold. So you move the temperature back and forth until it feels workable. And again, some showers don't have that, precision. Like we have one where the temperature is set at a certain level and we can always get back to it. But some you're playing with the dial, right? You're moving it back and forth until it's set. That's not failure. You're not failing at showering. It's responsiveness, right? Hey, this is happening. You're not going to beat yourself up over it, right? So when you allow range, you're really staying in motion, right? When you demand perfection, you're going to stall. So again, this leans back to number 7 as well. So the goal isn't to hit the mark every time. It's to stay within reach often enough to keep going. Right? And another thing that's interesting when you think about it is we often are chasing perfection, but number 1, it's not the right season. So that makes it even worse. Number 2, and I use the darts analogy a lot from Ted Lasso, where I saw that show, and anyone who's watching this from the UK or is a darts fan knows where I'm probably going to go with this, or at least can understand why I might think this way, is I'm always aiming for the bullseye, right? Like, hey, I want to get the bullseye every single time, but that's not necessarily how you win. So the target you could be aiming for is wrong, or your understanding of what it is maybe off. So range is really helpful. So I think it's important. That's why it's one of these tips, is to allow range instead of chasing perfection. Jackie's got a point in here in the live stream: progress, not perfection. And yeah, and if the range is, if you do that, then you're really looking at the range, the tolerance level. And when I say tolerance, again, tolerance is a measurement of sorts, right? So there's precision, there's accuracy, there's tolerance, right? And you could argue that they all kind of mesh together to a degree, but perfection is. And Jim Sinegal used to say this at Costco when he was CEO. He goes, the pursuit of perfection is not ideal. It's a bad idea. Instead, we should be seeking excellence, right? You can do that by perfecting things, but you'll always be perfecting things. So again, allow range instead of chasing perfection. And these are all things that I think you should keep in mind, not just as we head into 2026, but beyond. All right, number 9, decide what enough looks like in advance. Decide what enough looks like in advance. If you haven't defined enough, and by the way, you may not like the word enough. I've not been a huge fan of it over the years. I've gotten better with the term because I've always thought that enough is just one step above not enough. Right? It's a very tenuous place to be. But again, if you're allowing range, then enough can be wider. Plenty is the same for me. I actually used to like to say, oh, you're plenty. But you could argue that, well, how far away are you from not being plenty? Like, what if you've got a plentiful life, what gets taken away so that it's no longer plentiful? So you could make those semantical arguments across a wide variety of words. But enough. And my friend Patrick Rohn, who's written a book called Enough, he actually, of course, if you're listening to the podcast, you know that we do a monthly series and we dive into these kind of ideas. And if enough isn't defined, Patrick defines it really well in his work. And for him, too. That's another important thing. If you don't define enough, then what it'll do is it'll expand endlessly. You'll always, again, it'll go back to that more. You'll keep polishing. You'll tweak. You'll tweak it. You'll tweak and you'll be tweaking it, but you'll also feel like, you'll get irritable. You'll revisit. There'll be a revisiting. There'll be a refining. There'll be a revising, revamping, optimizing, not because it's needed, but because there's really no clear stopping point. Again, I ran into this issue when I was working on my book, right? And it's an issue that I've run into every time I've worked on a book. Like, okay, is this it? Okay, this is it. Oh, but I could add this. No, this is it. I've gotten better at it. Because you have to decide where is the point where that's it. We're done. So deciding what enough means before you start as much as possible. It protects your energy and it protects your attention. It gives you permission to stop without any form of guilt or, regret, shame, all that stuff, right? And oh, I like this phrase, actually. We'll come back to it in a second. I see it in the chat. Tim's brought up. Enough isn't laziness, by the way. It's really discernment, okay? We can't confuse those. External factors might make us think that we do or make us want to, but really we need to have some resolve around that. Like, hey, I'm making this choice not because I'm lazy, but because I recognize that this is enough. It's knowing when continued effort adds a little value and choosing to redirect instead. So when you decide, and by the way, this is what Tim says. I like this phrase. It's his grandfather used the phrase elegant sufficiency. I love that because it's kind of, it creates an image in your head of like, hey, this isn't just sufficient. It's sufficient in a way that feels right. So if you don't want to use the phrase enough, that's totally fine. But the premise of deciding what enough looks like in advance is still valid. All right, we're in the home stretch, the last three. Number 10, create pauses on purpose. Create pauses on purpose. I was watching the movie Flaming Hot finally. Last night I watched it because I'd worked all day and I needed something to escape. Just my brain was fried. And Flaming Hot, for those that don't know, it's I think it was on Disney Plus. Would have been a Hulu show, I believe. Directed by Eva Longoria, probably best known for the TV show Desperate Housewives. But it's the story of the creation of the Flaming Hot Cheetos and the spicy blend. And it's a really inspirational story. I don't want to spoil it. But there's a point in the film, they do it a couple of times, where things are getting harried and frenetic and chaotic, and there's a spiral happening. And the lead character and his wife, they stop for a second. They go, okay, let's count. 3, 2, 1, breathe. And it was really interesting is that it just kind of brought everything down because you could feel the blur happening in those scenes where it was happening. We have those happening in our own lives. And without pauses, everything blurs together. Even I'm deliberately at this point taking, and this wasn't intentional, at least out of the gate, but after I recite each tip, I'm now taking a sip of coffee, which is acting as a pause. That way you have a chance to, oh, this is the tip, and then he's going to repeat it. Otherwise, this is a blur, right? Even now you can hear me talk, I'm slowing down a bit, right? And slowing down is basically the precursor to pausing, I think. So when everything blurs together, you move from one thing to the next without any kind of integration. You're doing plenty of stuff. There's that word plenty, but you feel oddly untouched by it, unaffected. Pauses aren't empty space. They are connective tissue. Juliet Funt talks about this in a moment to think, right? Or a minute to think in her work. Pauses allow learning, and they allow meaning, and they really do allow insight to settle. So if I pause here and you're watching this or listening to this, then it gives you a chance to, quote, catch up, to think more, to understand, to acknowledge, to maybe add something to the conversation. So even a brief pause, by the way, breath, like I just illustrated, a walk, a moment of silence, it can change how the next wave or block or theme of time unfolds, right? Just like when I talked about the mind being at rest, rest isn't the opposite of work. It's really part of how the work becomes whole. So create pauses on purpose. If your day is jammed from beginning to end on your calendar, create some buffer time. Either deliberately put it there if you can't have the willingness or you're short on will to do it yourself, or know that in these themed periods that you've put on your calendar, let's say you're time crafting and you've got these themes, having those spaces in there for rest is really important. Or again, just taking a deep breath and pausing along the way. All right. And yes, Tim brings this up. Pauses when you pause, it gives you rhythm and cadence, right? It creates that. Even as I'm doing this now, because I'm looking at the time going, I want to get this done by, within the hour. Sometimes that won't happen, right? Sometimes it will, right? But I think that those pauses really, really matter. Don't have to be long. I know Questlove in his book, Creative Quest, talks about micro meditations, even those. Just taking some time to do those, really, really important. Number 11, review gently and regularly. Review gently and regularly. Systems like getting things done, frameworks, approaches, time crafting, any of these, bullet journal, all of them, they require a level of review. But like anything else, that review is inherently yours. Reviews don't need to be forensic. They don't need to be detailed. They just need to be... They just need to be. They don't need to be harsh. They don't need to be constant. That's why I'm not a huge fan of I think tracking initial data is important, but if you keep doing it, it can, mechanize processes. It becomes a level of inhuman or inhumane, and we're human. So we want more humane ways to make our way through the days. So I would even argue that the more judgmental that your review is, so whether it's a journal entry or a weekly review or whatever you're doing, it's really the less honest it's going to be. Now, let me explain. When you get too judgmental, you really stop noticing what's real and you start defending yourself from the process, right? Because what happens is if you get too judgmental, and again, approach this back to Ted Lasso, be curious, not judgmental. If you approach this from a level of curiosity as opposed to judgment, you want to learn more. We talked about this right earlier in the tips here. We are seekers, we're explorers. As humans naturally look for those things. We like patterns too, right? Our brain loves patterns. So if we create a lot of judgment around our journaling, and sometimes we do that with every good intention, right? Hey, I want to be better. So I'm going to really criticize how I'm making my way through. I'm going to look at my last year and go, oh, this is what I didn't do. And I fell down here and did all this. What can happen is you don't want to face that judgment. So you find reasons to not review. Oh, it was fine. Oh, it was, no problem. Oh, this got in the way. Or, you know what? I'm just never going to get this done. Or, this is my lot in life. And we can even use some of these tips against us. Oh, this isn't the season for it, right? Honesty is really important in these things. And again, you don't have to make these reviews, whether they're daily journals, weekly, however you're going to do it. If you approach them with curiosity rather than judgment, you're more likely to lean in than run away. So I would say a gentle review really asks simpler questions. And again, this doesn't have to be complicated. What worked? What didn't? What wants suggesting? Like those three questions. When a review or any kind of reflection becomes a rhythm and not a reckoning, and yes, I did write that down because I like that phrasing, it supports learning instead of fear. Okay? And I've said this many times before. If the calendar offers you the directory of your days, and the to-do list offers you the details of your days, then the journal or the review or however reflective practice you're looking, it's going to fill in the blanks. It's telling the story of your days, right? And that's a story of you. It's a story worth reading. It's a story worth keeping. But it's got to be honest, right? So again, review gently and regularly. And if you approach, I believe, with curiosity, you're going to be able to hit both of those. Finally, let's move on to the last one. Number 12, return often. Progress is cyclical. We'll get into what I mean by that in a second. So return often. Progress is cyclical. In our membership community, whenever we do a Ready Retreat, which we do 3 times a year, I think 3 times a year. Yes, I'm looking at my calendar for next year, the TimeCrafting calendar, which you can get at newyear.com, NEUYEAR.com. If you don't already have a wall calendar. Jesse Itzler makes a great one too. The Ready Retreat happens, and then the month after that in our community, we do a workshop called the Ready Return. Because in that time span of 4, 5, 6 weeks, whatever it is, life happened. There are things that you didn't anticipate. And so to return back to what you mapped out, or what our attendees mapped out at the Ready Retreat, is really powerful. So yeah, like when we do the Ready Retreat, and in 2026, we're doing it in January and May and September, the months after, February, June, and also October, it gets you a chance to get back to that. Because again, progress is cyclical. Progress doesn't collapse when you drift. It just collapses when you decide that drifting means that you've failed. Right? So, again, I think this becomes easier the more lived experience you have. Because you've had experiences of where you can go, oh, you know what, you're right. Like I drifted, but there was a purpose to it. Or it doesn't mean I've gotten completely off track. Again, reflection allows you to get back on track easily or course correct. That's why I love the idea of a daily reflective practice. I can course correct faster, with more clarity, better, maybe even. Everyone drifts. Everyone, from routines, which is why I like them to be rituals now, from intentions, right? Big and small, from the version of themselves that they were trying to be. The skill here isn't to stay perfectly aligned or attuned. I like using the word attuned as well. The skill is really noticing it and then returning. Every return strengthens trust. So when you are using a paper planner and it falls by the wayside for a few days, and then you go back to it, you start to trust it more. And you don't just trust the journal or the planner or, let's say, an app or whatever more. You trust the link between them more. You trust yourself more. You trust that you know what to do in situations like this more. All of that. So it's not just strengthening trust in that moment. It's building a stronger level of trustworthiness over time. So every return strengthens that across the board, with yourself, with your systems, with time. You don't need a dramatic restart. I mean, we're literally doing this the day that we're getting ready to turn the calendar from 2025 to 2026. And often we make January 1st that dramatic restart, right? For me, it's not January 1st, but it's September 1st. And by the way, eventually it will become my birthday. I know that that's eventually going to be what my season looks like. Actually, let me rephrase. I have a sense that that's what's going to happen, but it all depends on how the future unfolds. What if I decide that September still works because the summer, July and August for me, is still a time where my daughter comes home from university, or we go on trips because, My son is done. He's in university now, although, and again, we're talking years down the road. Or, my wife, doesn't have to do as much work in the summer. Like, what if, I don't know. And I have to be open to that too, right? But the return and that idea, because I trust that, like, I can move that year. If I decide September 1st no longer serves me and I want to move to my birthday, I can, and everything follows. If I want to go back to Groundhog Day, which used to be the start of my year, I could do that and it will follow. If I want to go to January 1st, I could do that and everything will follow. You don't need a dramatic restart. Maybe you're going to use one. Maybe you're going to start with that today or tomorrow if you're watching this as the year turns. But you don't have to make it dramatic. You just need a gentle step back toward what matters. So, as we wrap up this live stream, and this episode, a couple things to think about. If you're listening to this on December 31st and you want to take some time the next day, January 1st, to make that gentle step back toward what matters, I encourage you to go through that journal that you've been keeping or the journals you've been keeping and just sit with them, read them, go through them. Review all of these steps, these tips that I've talked about. There's a blog post that we're going to link to this as well, inside the description, so you can go back and see the written comments around each of these. Return to as many of these as you want. I can tell you that on January 1st, I sit in the chair that is literally right back here, which, if you're watching it live, is just behind me to my right, and I will read my journal entries for the entire year from January 1st, 2025 to December 31st, 2025. And I'll take notes. I'll look for patterns. That January 1st is incredibly quiet. And so that's what I do. I would encourage you to take January 1st and spend some time in that reflection, big or small, right? Reflect on what we've shared today. Reflect on what we shared in this episode, in this live stream, on the blog post. And I would bet that it's going to help you craft the months ahead in a way that works best for you, no matter what season you're in. So with that in mind, and by the way, I want to thank everybody for being here today. Whether you're watching live, whether you're listening to the podcast episode, really big thanks for being here and for keeping up with my work throughout all of 2025 and perhaps before. And I hope to see you more in 2026 as well. We've got a lot of great stuff planned as those seasons kind of unfold. Want to thank everybody that is a member of the TimeCrafting Trust premium community. Thank those that picked up the 12 days of TimeCrafting. Don't forget, as you're listening to this, if you're listening to this between the end of the live stream and New Year's Day, if you want to pick up the 12 days of TimeCrafting, you've still got a chance to do so. And then after that, vault closes. If you're a member of the community, though, you have access to it as long as you're a member. So I want to thank those. I want to thank Sarah, who has been, we've tried to define what her title or is inside of the work that I'm doing here and the work that we're all doing here, as not just somebody who's helping with the work and helping shape the work, but also allowing she's embracing the work, embracing what we're doing here. I owe Sarah a lot for that. So thanks to Sarah for that. Thanks to all of the members of the TimeCrafting Trust community who are trustees, who we bounce ideas off of as well to make that community better. And thanks to everybody who subscribes to my emails, the weekly emails, the Lantern. We're about to turn the page on volume 1 in a few weeks and go to volume 2 of the Lantern. And I want to thank you for watching and listening, no matter which way you're doing it. If you're listening to this, thanks so much for listening to this episode, as well as previous episodes of the podcast. Love for you to subscribe. If you're watching this on YouTube or LinkedIn, I'd love for you to follow me on LinkedIn or subscribe to the YouTube channel. We got big plans for YouTube. in 2026. So thanks to everybody for being here. I hope that if you're no matter when you're watching this, I hope that the months ahead are great. And if you're watching this particularly live or listening to this as we're about to turn from 2025 to 2026, I wish you an amazing evening and a great start and continued success throughout 2026. So with that in mind, we'll wrap things up. Thanks so much for being here today. Happy New Year.